You're listening to live courtroom coverage of the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now, back to the courtroom.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in the jury. We'll commence with the opening statements.
She's going to be doing her.
We'll have access to email right now?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe an email can be sent to Mr. White to see if, or even your paralegal that's now walking in could see if there's some way to coordinate picking up any documents that are needed. Or if they could even be digitally emailed over, if you need assistance printing them, we can do that too.
All rest of the jury.
All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, welcome back. As you can see, we have extra jurors just in case someone can't proceed, which you've observed that we already had to use or let one juror go. At this time, the state can proceed with its opening statement.
Thank you. A Jeep Wrangler. The Texas license plate, no rear tire, and dark tint was parked right up next to Brandon Boudreaux's driveway, idle. At 9:13 a.m. on October 2nd of 2019, Brandon Boudreaux returned home. That Jeep had been idling there already for over an hour. When Brandon turned onto his street, he immediately noticed this Jeep because it was parked so close to his driveway. The back of the Jeep was facing towards him, and he immediately also noticed that there was no rear tire. He saw a Texas plate on the Jeep, and then he saw that back window of the Jeep open up, a rifle barrel come out and point at him. And then bang! He heard a shot and his window shattered right next to him. Brandon hit the accelerator and he took off. He turned the corner and drove a block or so away and stopped, calling 911. He talked to the operator and told them where this Jeep was going. As Brandon was speaking with the 911 operator, he had no idea that that bullet had struck his car just a few inches from his head. You'll learn that in the back of that Jeep was this defendant's brother, Alex Cox. He had been lying in wait with a rifle for Brandon to return home. This defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, the woman seated over here, had loaned her Jeep to her brother so he could drive it to Arizona, so he could be in the back of that Jeep with very dark tint that no one could see through and wait for Brandon to return home. The goal of this defendant and her co-conspirators? To shoot and kill Brandon Boudreaux. So let's talk about October 2nd and the weeks leading up to that. All of the actions that this defendant did in furtherance of that conspiracy and the premeditated murder of Brandon Boudreaux. I'm going to start with a little background for you. In June of 2019, Brandon Boudreaux was still married to his then wife, Melanie. You're going to learn that Melanie is this defendant's niece. You're going to learn they were very close. And you're going to learn that they both had it out for Brandon. On June 25th, Brandon and Melanie got into an argument. And Brandon learned that this defendant had told his wife that he was gay, that he had hacked into her computer, and that Brandon was trying to work with her then husband to take her temple recommend away. You're going to learn that many of the people, including Brandon and this defendant, are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And having your temple recommend taken away is a very significant event. You're going to learn and see that Brandon actually texted Lori Vallow on the 25th of June to confront her about these lies, and that she never responded. By July, just a short while later, Brandon and Melanie were seeing a mediator and proceeding through a divorce. You're going to also hear that during this time, Lori Vallow and Alex Cox lived here in Arizona. In fact, Lori lived in Chandler. You're going to hear about an incident that occurred on July 11th of 2019 in Chandler involving Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. The Chandler police were out at this defendant's residence, and they took photographs of some vehicles. One of those vehicles was a 2018 Jeep Wrangler with Texas license plates, LWD 0997. That will be very important to you. They also noted that Alex had his own car, a Ford F-150. Both of those vehicles were in Chandler in July. You're going to learn that in August through September, Lori Vallow and her brother Alex Cox moved up to Rexburg, Idaho, to be closer to this defendant's soon-to-be husband, Chad Daybell. Both of them moved into a complex at 565 Pioneer Road in Rexburg, Idaho. Lori took the Jeep Wrangler and a Nissan Rogue, and Alex brought his Ford F-150. So everyone had their own vehicles. You're going to learn that as the divorce is proceeding between Brandon and his then wife, Melanie, that they put their house up for sale. And Melanie moved out and got a rental property. When their house finally sold, Brandon had to rent a home too. And on September 13th of 2019, he rented a house at 3875 East Phelps Street in Gilbert. Brandon will tell you his plan initially was to stay in his own house almost up to the time of the closing and then move into the rental property. You will see a text message that Melanie asked Brandon for his new address. They had children in common, so he didn't think anything of this. And he sent her the address. That was on September 17th. You'll learn that Melanie Boudreaux, this defendant's niece, was the only person who knew Brandon's address, who knew 3875 East Phelps Street, and who also knew this defendant and Alex Cox. Brandon barely moved into that house before the shooting. In fact, he'd moved in sooner than he thought because Melanie told him she was going out of town and offered him the kids for an extra weekend. And so he moved in sooner and took the kids while she flew to Rexburg, Idaho on September 26th through the 29th to be with this defendant. So in the weeks leading up to this October 2nd shooting, We'll talk about all of these things that were done in furtherance of this conspiracy, starting with Lori Vallow's Jeep. You'll learn that Alex Cox searched out a place to have extra window tinting put on the Jeep. And I say that because you're going to see the photos from the Jeep in July, and you'll see there's tinting on the windows, but you can still see into it. And so, on September 25th, Alex Cox took that Jeep to Dan's Window Tinting in Rexburg, Idaho, and he paid $200 to put some of the darkest tint you could put on it. You'll see those photos of what that Jeep looked like afterwards. This is the first action of this defendant, Lori Vallow, in the conspiracy, loaning her brother this Jeep and allowing him to put on these dark tint to get it ready so he can lie in wait and no one could see him in the back with that rifle. It is her first mistake, using that Jeep and tying herself to the conspiracy and to the premeditation. Also on September 25th, you're going to learn that Lori Vallow and her accomplice, Alex Cox, went to the Walmart superstore in Idaho Falls. You're going to learn that's not far from Rexburg. And they purchased a burner phone. Now, a burner phone is a phone that you don't have to put your subscriber information to. And so, how do we know that Alex Cox was there and Lori Vallow was there? Well, you're going to learn they each had their own cell phone, like most of us do, and that Alex Cox's cell phone was utilizing Wi-Fi inside that Walmart at the time that burner phone was purchased with cash. And you'll learn that this defendant's cell phone that was subscribed to her was utilizing cell towers in the area of that Walmart at the time that that burner phone was purchased. Lori Vallow and Alex Cox knew that he would need a phone when he drove down here, but they knew you don't want to bring your own phone. You'll be tracked, right? So they bought this burner phone so that Alex would have contact while he drove down here and away. But Alex made a mistake. Because like any other phone, you can still use a burner phone to access Google or your Gmail accounts. And you're going to learn that Alex accessed his Gmail account. In this investigation, you'll learn the police executed many, many search warrants, and one of them was on Alex Cox's Gmail account, homerjmaximus@gmail.com. You're going to learn that Alex searched for things like window tinting in Rexburg, that he searched for places to practice shooting ranges. You're going to learn that he searched different things about angles or trajectories of shots. You're going to learn that the day before, on October 1st and the morning of October 2nd, he searched 3875 East Phelps Street, where Brandon Boudreaux lived. You're going to learn that after the shooting, Alex Cox actually searched for directions on how to get away through a back road. He knew he hadn't killed Brandon. Brandon's calling 911, and so he searched for Pine Top, Holbrook, Moab, Utah, Fillmore, Utah, and eventually Idaho Falls as he made his way back through back roads. You're going to learn that the police also executed search warrants on this defendant's Gmail account, lollytimeforever@gmail.com. On September 30th, the day when her brother took her Jeep and started driving down to Arizona, she searched, quote, how to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler. And she also searched a YouTube video, Jeep Wrangler JK rear seat removal, how to DIY YouTube video. This defendant continued to be a co-conspirator and to aid her accomplice, Alex Cox, by searching how to remove that back seat of the Jeep so he could better lie in wait to shoot Brandon. This was the defendant's second mistake, and more evidence of her being a co-conspirator and the premeditation. This defendant also, on September 30th, began aiding Alex by becoming his alibi. You'll hear from Nick Valance, who is an FBI agent who deals with cellular analysis, that around 4:30 p.m. on September 30th, Alex Cox's cell phone, the one that he's subscribed to, moved from his apartment in this same complex where he and Lori Vallow lived to Lori Vallow's unit. And from them on for the next couple days, Alex Cox's phone remained with this defendant. Meanwhile, that burner phone from that Idaho Falls Walmart on September 30th started moving towards Arizona. You will hear that on October 2nd of 2019, at about 8 in the morning Arizona time, about an hour before the shooting, this defendant created the alibi. She had Alex Cox's phone call her phone to make it look like he was still in Rexburg, Idaho, instead of in Gilbert, Arizona. That fake call lasted about 24 minutes. Both of those cell phones were using the same cell tower in Rexburg, Idaho. This was Lori Vallow's third mistake. More evidence that she was a co-conspirator and of that premeditation to aid her brother in this shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. So how do we know, though, that Lori Vallow's Jeep drove from Idaho to Arizona? Well, we're going to start by learning about what we call LPRs, or license plate readers. You will learn and see a photo of Lori Vallow's Jeep in Arizona on October 1st of 2019, up near Holbrook on the I-40. You'll hear that the DEA has a license plate reader there, and they took a photo of Lori Vallow's Jeep with that license plate LWD 0997 on its way to Gilbert, Arizona. You're also going to learn that the police later recovered that Jeep back up in Rexburg, and they did a couple different search warrants on it. And what they recovered inside the Jeep, among other things, was a receipt from October 1st of 2019 from Mesa, Arizona, the day before the shooting, from a restaurant called Los Favoritos out on Power Road. You're going to learn that at the time the burner phone is down here in Arizona. You'll learn that Alex Cox was using his Gmail and Googling an address on Power Road around the time when we then see the receipt. Alex Cox, Lori Vallow's Jeep, and Alex's rifle are here in Arizona waiting to commit this shooting. Meanwhile, up in Rexburg, on October 1st, this defendant does a little more additional help. She goes to a storage unit in Rexburg, Idaho, and rents unit C52. The next day, on October 2nd, when this shooting is happening down in Arizona, or after the shooting actually, she brings her soon-to-be husband, Chad Daybell, with her. And you will see video of this as she and Chad Daybell put the rear tire and the rear bench seat of that Jeep into the storage unit. Using the storage unit for that Jeep tire and that bench seat so that her co-conspirator, Alex, could lie in wait in the back of the Jeep, waiting for Brandon to return home that morning. This is, again, evidence of that conspiracy and of the premeditation to kill Brandon. So October 2nd, the morning of this shooting, you will see that Alex Cox was Googling that address, 3875 East Falls Road. His burner phone from Idaho Falls, Idaho, is in Gilbert, Arizona. He's using his Gmail account, and he is using cell towers around Melanie Boudreaux's residence. Now, this is important because Melanie knew that Brandon had their kids. They had 4. She knew that Brandon that morning was going to have to drop off 3 of the kids at school and that they would exchange their youngest. They would meet at a park. Brandon would text Melanie, let her know he was there, She would respond, and they would exchange their youngest child. While Brandon was leaving his house to take his kids to school, that Idaho burner phone moves to his residence and begins waiting for him. Alex kept the Jeep running as he waited for Brandon to return. What Melanie didn't know was that Brandon was going to the gym after dropping off the kids, and so Alex had to wait longer. You'll hear that one of Brandon's neighbors noticed this Jeep. It's a neighborhood that doesn't have any real easy ingress or egress. You'll see a map of it, so there's very little through traffic. And so the neighborhood knows and recognizes most of the same cars. And you'll hear from a neighbor that as he was backing out, he saw this Jeep parked the wrong way on the road, nose to nose with another vehicle that he did recognize. He saw the dark tinting. He saw it was running, and he thought it just stood out as unusual in his neighborhood. It made him actually look into his rearview mirror to note it had a Texas license plate. This was about 30 plus minutes before Brandon arrived home. When Brandon got to the house that day, Alex was ready with the rifle. And we know that he was able to just lift up that back window because the tire wasn't on it. Alex fired one shot. Luckily, he did not hit Brandon. You will see that Brandon was driving a Tesla at the time. And unlike many cars, there's no frame around the window. The window just goes into the door, into the car itself. The shot hit the frame of the vehicle, but right where the window goes up into it. And you'll see that there is damage to the window as well as the bullet hole into the frame of the vehicle itself, right above Brandon's head when he was sitting in that driver's seat. You'll hear that when Brandon took off, the window remained in the door, that he drove away and then eventually circled back around and went into his driveway. You'll hear that for a Tesla, when you put the car in park, the door automatically opens and the whole window just shattered out. Brandon was on the phone with 911 soon after the shooting. You'll hear that call, him actually sounding out of breath from the fear. And he waited for the police to arrive. Alex Cox, of course, is Googling how to get out of there and get back to Rexburg, Idaho. And by October 3rd, he was back there. That same day on October 3rd, you will see that Alex Cox and Lori Vallow went back to the storage unit. They removed that rear tire. They removed the rear seat of the Jeep and took it with them. You will again see video of that. You'll also see that they Googled that day, news in Gilbert, shootings of Brandon, to try to find out what the police knew. How did the police figure out that this defendant and Alex Cox were involved? Well, when the police were interviewing Brandon, they asked him if he had any enemies. Who would want to do this? And Brandon told the police the only people he could think of was Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. He told them that Lori had lived in Texas and that the Jeep had a Texas license plate. And he told them about that incident on July 11th of 2019 in Chandler involving Lori Vallow and Alex Cox. And he believed this was all tied together. You'll hear that the Gilbert police reached out to the Chandler Police Department and learned about that Jeep with the Texas plates, LWD 0997. the same plate that was seen on that license plate reader on October 1st coming into Arizona. The Gilbert police learned that Lori Vallow and Alex Cox were living in Rexburg, Idaho, and they reached out to law enforcement there. You'll hear that on November 1st, police in Idaho went to 565 Pioneer Road, that apartment complex, and they saw Lori Vallow, they saw Alex Cox, and they saw Chad Daybell. They didn't see the Jeep that day, and so they went back a few days later on November 4th and saw the Jeep located near Lori Vallow's residence. Tires back on it, rear seat is back in it. You'll hear that they impounded it, and on November 18th, the Gilbert police flew to Idaho to process it. You're going to learn about GSR, or gunshot residue. You're going to learn that they process the vehicle, basically they're little sticky kits. GSR is microscopic. You can't see it, so you try to collect it, and then you give it to an expert to look through it. You will hear that those kits were sent to the Phoenix Police Department and reviewed, and that particles indicative of gunshot residue were located on the kits that were tested from the rear of that Jeep Wrangler, and that this is consistent with a gun being fired from the rear of the Jeep. You also hear that the Gilbert Police Department collected DNA from areas like the steering wheel, the gear shift, seatbelt buckles, and that they got a blood blot from Alexander Cox. DNA profiles were created from the steering wheel and other areas around the driver's seat. And the DNA was found to be a mixture, multiple people, but the major contributor was Alexander Cox. Again, you will hear that the police executed multiple search warrants on cell phones, cell tower usage, data from Gmail accounts, and data from iCloud accounts. You will see a map of Lori Vallow's cell phone, Alex Cox's cell phone, as well as that burner phone from that Walmart in Idaho Falls, the one that was associated to Alex Cox's Gmail account. You will hear from Nick Balance from the FBI, and he'll show you how that burner phone went from Rexburg, Idaho, down to Gilbert, Arizona, was there for the shooting, and returned back to Rexburg, and was never used again after that. You will learn that the only phone number that burner phone called or received calls from was Chad Daybell, this defendant's soon-to-be husband. The same phone, of course, that was using those cell towers right around Brandon's home at the time of the shooting. This defendant, Lori Vallow Daybell, has been charged with conspiracy to commit the first-degree murder of Brandon Boudreaux on October 2nd of 2019. The evidence in this case will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant conspired with Alex Cox and others to kill Brandon. She provided the means, the Jeep, she helped get the Jeep ready, and she tried to provide an alibi for her co-conspirator. At the end of this trial, the state will ask you all to hold this defendant accountable and find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Thank you.
Would the defense like to give an opening statement at this time?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here we are at trial. And the judicial system can be difficult to understand at times. There are laws and rules and statutes that govern how things will proceed in this trial. You yesterday got to hear the preliminary jury instruction, so you kind of got an order of how things are going to go. In order for someone to be charged with a crime, as I have been,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to argument versus an opening statement.
I'll remind the defendant, an opening statement should be a preview of what is to be expected at trial. So go ahead.
that law enforcement presents evidence that they gather, and the state prosecutors are going to present that to you. Sometimes the state charges the defendant with a crime. They have charged me with a crime, a very serious crime. Sometimes they take the allegations to a grand jury to decide if the defendant
I'm going
should
to
be charged.
object again, Your Honor. Improper
That's,
argument. Asked to strike.
Hold on. The jury should disregard that last comment. How the charges arrived here are not for the jury's consideration. The prior proceedings are not for the jury's consideration. Please proceed.
The state or the prosecution will then take the information gathered, the evidence from law enforcement, and present to you a story, a theory, their hypothesis of what happened. In this case, the prosecutor was not present during this alleged crime. The Gilbert Police Department was not present during this alleged crime. So it is their job to fill in the gaps, make up a theory, and present it to you, the jury, at trial. This is their job. They are not witness to the actual events because they weren't there that day with Brandon at the house when this alleged shooting occurred. This case is about a conspiracy. And a conspiracy is when two or more people make an agreement to commit a crime. They have to willingly and knowingly participate. Conspiracy is an ancient word that appears in the Bible on many occasions. Judas conspired against Jesus with the chief priests for 30 pieces of silver.
Object to, unless this is being presented at trial, I'm not sure that this is appropriate opening.
What is the legal objection?
You're arguing. The opening statement is not argument. I'm going to allow it briefly, but I may cut you off depending on where you're going with that.
Cain conspired against Abel, his brother. This case is a case of conspiracy. The charge against me is that I conspired with my brother, Alex Cox, to murder my niece's husband, Brandon Boudreaux. But you will find, as you begin to see the evidence put forth in this case, that there was not any animosity between Brandon and myself. I personally did not have any motivation to have harm come to Brandon. In fact, Brandon and I had a very friendly relationship all of the time that I have known him. I first met Brandon when he was marrying my niece, Melanie.
And Your Honor, I'm going to object to, unless the defendant's testifying.
Hold on. Can I have the parties approach briefly? Can I have you approach briefly? Go ahead.
I first met Brandon when he was marrying my niece, Melanie. Melanie and I are very close because my sister, her mother, passed away when she was just 9 years old. So Melanie and I think of each other and love each other like a mother and daughter, even though we are aunt and niece. So our families remained close, Melanie and Brandon's family and my family. And in each other's lives, like everyday lives. We spent holidays together and shared in everyday life. I was there for Melanie and Brandon's wedding and for the birth of all 4 of their children. I was also very close to all 4 of their children. In this case, you will hear Brandon himself tell you that someone shot a gun at his car. You will learn in this testimony that Brandon was not hurt. You will learn that he wasn't even sure what had happened. But you will hear that Brandon immediately blamed me, which begs the question, was I an enemy to Brandon? That is news to me, and hopefully by the end of this trial, we will all have some answers to that question. In this case, you will learn that Brandon had called 911, and Gilbert Police did respond. You will learn that Brandon speaks of a puke green Jeep, and then he offers the officers a camo green color that he's speaking of on his phone. He says a green Jeep. Then you will hear the neighbor who says that it was a dark blue Jeep that was parked in front of the neighbor's house. You will learn that Brandon very quickly hired a private investigator to find out where I was living out of the state of Arizona so he could inform the police. You will see Brandon exchange email information with Detective Pillar, the case agent in this case, about my whereabouts and about the financial dealings of my niece, Melanie Boudreaux. You will learn that Brandon was not particularly satisfied with the investigation that Gilbert Police was conducting, so he did his own investigation, hiring his own private investigator to follow his wife, Melanie Boudreaux. You will find out that Brandon had access to the VIN number of a Jeep and gave it to the police. You will find out that after that event, he quickly changed his story from a camo green Jeep to a gray Jeep. You will then learn that Brandon continued to provide information he was personally finding out to Detective Pillar, the case agent in this case. You will learn that Detective Pillar and Brandon discussed through email how they can demonstrate Melanie's financial gain if Brandon were to have died around October 2nd, 2019. This is what a conspiracy looks like. Two people trying to set up another person for a crime. My niece, Melanie Boudreaux, is named by the state as a co-conspirator. However, she has not been charged with the crime.
I'm going to object
but
and
I
have that
have.
struck as well, Your Honor.
The jury should disregard that statement. You're going to receive an instruction later that all persons that may be involved would not necessarily be charged or called as witnesses, and you'll follow those instructions later. Go ahead.
I was not living in Arizona at the time this alleged incident happened on October 2nd, 2019. I was not even aware such an event had taken place. I did have a close relationship with my brother Alex, but I was not aware of his every move. Melanie also had a close relationship with Alex, but also was not aware of his location at all times. Brandon and Alex also had a good relationship until this accusation. They saw each other frequently at all of our family parties and get-togethers and would often be seen laughing and talking. Alex was a comedian who kept our family laughing. Alex passed away in December 2019 of natural causes, so he is not here to defend himself.
And I'm going to object again to that as well, since he's not party to this. He's
All
not
right,
here.
I'll just remind the jury that what is said in opening statements is not evidence, it's not sworn testimony. Please proceed.
Although the state has alleged that there are several co-conspirators in this case, I am the only one being charged with a crime. So you will be the judge. You will hear and see evidence presented by the state. The state has, according to the law, 100% burden to prove to you
I'm
that
going to object to misstatement of the law in terms of 100%.
All right, again, this is a little bit bordering on argument, but the jury will receive the instructions on what is and what is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
the state has the burden to prove that a crime has been committed here and that I committed that crime. That is the way the law is written. I do not have to show any evidence or put up a defense. I do not have to testify. That is the law. The prosecutors from the state have to prove to you that I conspired, meaning made an agreement with my brother to murder Brandon. So you will decide. Right now, according to the law, I am innocent. I remain innocent until the state of Arizona and its prosecutors show you enough evidence to convince you that I had anything to do with this alleged crime. And I want you to look carefully and determine if this event was a crime at all. Did a shooting actually occur? Only Brandon claims that it did. Only Brandon names me and Alex. You will learn that Brandon himself did own a gun. You will learn that Brandon knew how to shoot his gun. You will learn that Brandon and Melanie were going through a divorce. And you will learn that even though Brandon is the one who actually filed for a divorce, he was blaming me for his divorce. You will learn that the information that the Gilbert Police Department and Detective Pillar, the case agent on this case, learned about me and my brother Alex was from Brandon Boudreaux. You will learn that Brandon and Detective Pillar communicated frequently and were on a first-name basis. I want you to look closely at the motivation of Brandon and the Gilbert Police Department, because I'm the only one charged with the crime, and I need you to decipher what really happened here, because I'm the only one who's being asked to pay a consequence for this crime.
And again, Your Honor, I'm going to ask to object and strike that.
Sustained. The jury, in their instructions, received an instruction that said the jury is not to consider a penalty. That will be in the final instructions area as well. The jury's job is to determine whether or not the state has proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt or the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Go ahead, proceed.
You will hear many references during this trial about the state versus Lori Daybell. Well, who is the state? The state are the prosecutors.
I object to argument and relevance.
Sustained.
And you, the jury, are brought in to stand between the state and me.
And I'm going to object again to improper statement of the law, argument, and relevance.
Sustained.
You are here to say if a crime has even been committed at all. You are here to say if I committed this very crime and if the state proved this to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If at the end of this trial you have reasonable doubt, then I remain innocent. If the state does not prove to you that I, 1, committed a crime, and 2, committed this crime, then I remain innocent. In this case, you will hear a lot of speculation. The definition of speculation is an idea or guess about something that is not known. During this trial, the state will try to convince you that I committed this crime by using speculation, innuendo, and insinuation. And the state is hoping that this will be enough. In this trial, you will in fact witness a power struggle between the state and the defendant.
Your Honor,
for what
I'm
a fact
going to object to
really
argument.
is.
Sustained.
Because they want to convince you, the jury, that a fact is speculation, that a fact is innuendo, that a fact is insinuation, that they knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was planning, when they don't know it all. You, the jury, have all the power to decide what the facts are and what they're not. Not the state, not the judge, not law enforcement. You. So I implore you to listen carefully and decide for yourselves if the state's theory really makes logical sense. What motivation did I have? What malice have I ever shown to anyone? What benefit would I gain? I am a person who loves all people and has no malice towards anyone, not even the prosecutors who wrongfully try to convict me.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again to relevance and to argument.
Sustained.
I am all about spreading love and will continue to do so, even after this trial is complete, no matter the result. Thank you.
All right, the state can call its first witness.
Thank you. The state will call Brandon Boudreaux.
Your Honor, could we have a...
You're going to come up here and be sworn in by the clerk.
Can you please state and spell your first and your last name? Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, sir, go around the court reporter, have a seat up here to my left.
Your Honor, could we have a sidebar?
Is it about what we discussed earlier? The state's probably going to, you won't complete your direct before lunch?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
Okay.
I will, but not for a second. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Brandon Boudreaux. I live here in Arizona.
And if you can pull the mic just a little closer to you and roll in a little closer. Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay. How old are you, Brandon?
I'm 40 years old.
You said you're currently living in Arizona?
I am, yes.
What do you do for a living?
Currently, I own a solar company.
Okay. I want to talk to you sort of about your marriages. Are you currently married?
I am.
Do you have a prior marriage?
I did, yes.
I want to talk about your prior marriage. When did you get married initially?
I was married initially October 31st, 2008.
And who were you married to?
Melanie Cope at the time, she became Boudreaux.
How long were you and Melanie married?
A little over 10 years.
Did you two have any children?
We have 4.
Do you recall approximately when you began divorce proceedings with Melanie?
It would have been in July of 2019.
And do you recall approximately when your divorce with Melanie was finalized?
It would have been in October of 2019.
Was it before or after October 2nd?
It was the middle of October,
Okay.
so after.
Now, do you have family here in Arizona?
I have a brother who lives in Tucson now, but at the time I did not have any family here in Arizona.
They lived in another state.
Yes.
Did Melanie have family that lived here in Arizona?
Yes, she did.
Did you know someone by the name of Lori Vallow?
I did. That was Melanie's aunt.
And did you spend a lot of time with Melanie's aunt, Lori Vallow?
Yes, we spent a lot of time together.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and tell us what she's wearing?
She's directly behind you wearing glasses and a blue top.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
It shall.
When you knew or were spending time with Lori Vallow, was she married at that time?
She was.
Who was her husband then?
Charles Vallow.
And how often would you see Lori Vallow and her family?
Pretty often. We would spend holidays together. We often vacationed together, and our children were close, so it wouldn't be unordinary to see each other every week.
Okay. Were you close with Lori Vallow's prior husband, Charles Vallow?
I was, yes.
Did you know other members of Melanie's sort of expanded family?
Yes, I did.
Did you know a person by the name of Alex Cox?
Yes, I did.
Who was he in relation to Melanie?
That would be her uncle.
Okay. So Lori's brother?
Correct, yes.
And before your divorce from Melanie, did you see Alex Cox often?
Not as often as Lori, but yes, I did see him.
Okay.
Usually at a family get-together.
Did you know anyone by the name of Chad Daybell?
No, I did not.
Did you later become aware that Lori Vallow married a Chad Daybell?
Yes, I did.
Can you try to describe for us the relationship between Melanie, your ex-wife, and her aunt, Lori Vallow?
I would say that she looked at her as maybe more than an aunt, like closer to a mother figure. Her mother passed away when she was younger, and she let her hold a lot of influence in her life.
Okay. Starting sort of the end of 2018 through 2019, did you notice Melanie spending a lot more time with Lori?
Can you ask that question one more time?
Sure. Starting sort of the end of 2018 through 2019, did you notice Melanie spending more time with Lori?
Yes.
In 2019, did you start to notice issues with your marriage with Melanie?
Yes, I did.
Without going into what was said, did you ever speak with Charles Vallow about Lori Vallow interfering with your marriage with Melanie?
Yes, I did. On a few occasions.
I want to talk to you about June 25th of 2019. Did that day stick out to you?
Yes, it does.
Why do you remember that date?
On June 25th of 2019, I had a long disagreement with my then wife. My grandfather had passed away suddenly of a heart attack a few days earlier, and she had told me she didn't want to go to his funeral, and that had led to the start of a disagreement that quickly changed and was very different than what I thought was going on.
I'm going to have you put your mic just a little closer to you.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So you said it started out as a conversation about going to your grandfather's funeral,
Yes,
and then it changed into something different?
it did, yes.
During this conversation with Melanie on June 25th, were you accused or told that you had been involved in doing some things to her aunt, Lori Vallow?
I was, yes. This sticks out because it was so bizarre to me. I was trying to talk to my wife about our relationship, and she was using different language that was confusing. She kept saying that she was going to reveal things about me, and it just didn't make sense. And then she accused me of hacking Lori's computer, which I knew I hadn't done, and I didn't know why it mattered to what we were talking about. So, that something like that sticks with you because it's just doesn't connect.
Do you know how to hack into other people's computers?
I do not.
So you're being accused of hacking into Lori Vallow's computer. Did anything get raised during this conversation regarding your sexuality?
Yeah, it was a very long argument. It started in the afternoon and went past midnight. And as things kept escalating, more different allegations that didn't make any sense kept coming up, and one of those was that God had revealed to her that I was gay, and that one stuck out because Charles had told me that Lori was trying to convince her of that, which I thought was so bizarre. It just didn't make any sense. I was married and we had 4 kids. So.
Did you ever hear anything about allegations that you were trying to help Charles take Lori Vallow's temple recommend away?
It didn't come up in that specific argument, other than as a side mention of why I might have hacked a computer. But yes, I did hear those allegations.
I want to ask you, are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes, I am.
Were you and Melanie both practicing members?
We were, yes.
Was Lori Vallow and her family practicing members?
As far as I knew, yes.
When we talk about a temple recommend, what is that?
Inside of our faith, we try to set aside the temple to be a place that's sacred. It's a place where you can be closer to God. And because you want it to be a sacred place, we try to live to a higher standard if we're going to go in there. You know, it's the idea of trying to be more like the Savior's example and keeping promises or covenants that you make to him. And so in that process, most of us self-report to a bishop or an ecclesiastical leader and a stake president or a higher ecclesiastical leader, just to verify that you're doing your best to keep those promises. It's kind of a way to help you assess, to decide if it's a place that you should go, or am I living in a way that I can go and feel good about, you know, trying to get closer to God in that space, and am I living in a way that sets it aside and makes it somewhere special, somewhere sacred?
If someone's temple recommend is removed who is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that a really significant thing?
For most of us, we would feel like, personally, I would feel that way. It's something that is sacred to me, and it is important. And so I would not want to lose that. It would be something that would reflect that I'm not doing a very good job of my goal to try to be more like my Savior.
Okay. When you are having this argument, this conversation with Melanie on June 25th, what are you thinking?
You know, it began with just frustration, which when I took a little time and was introverted and thought about it, I realized wasn't fair. If she didn't want to go to a grandfather's funeral, I recognized that me feeling frustrated was something I should deal with myself, but not try to force someone else to do something that they weren't comfortable with. And then it was just really painful, because the rest of it there's a lot of frustration that comes from, at the end of it, she was asking for a divorce and demanding that we end our marriage. And, you know, I had 4 kids, and this was going to change their entire world. It was going to change everything for my family.
Did you, having spoken with Melanie, feel that Lori Vallow was involved in some of these things that Melanie was telling you, that was why your divorce should end?
Can you ask that question one more time?
Sure. As you are listening to the things that Melanie was telling you that evening or afternoon into the evening of June 25th, did you believe that Lori Vallow had been involved in some of these ideas that were being told to you as to why your marriage should end?
Yeah, I mean, how else does her aunt's computer getting hacked even come up without Lori being involved? So I got pretty frustrated at one point, and I think I told her I'm going to take a break, and I texted Lori and Charles and tried to call both of them to discuss it with them, because I wanted them to understand the gravity. You know, this is my family. This is my kids. This changes the rest of their lives. You know, it's not just whatever was going on for those two.
So you told us that you just mentioned that you actually sent a text message, or a couple of text messages, to Lori Vallow that evening?
Yes, I did.
Can you scoot just a little closer? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Why did you text Lori Vallow that night?
Hope that she would have integrity, that she would respond and acknowledge that I didn't hack her computer. I don't know, honestly. Just hope, you know. I was trying to find something to fix the problem.
So you felt strongly enough that Lori Vallow was involved in these ideas that Melanie was putting at you, that you actually reached out to her?
Yes.
Your Honor, I've shown the defendant Exhibit 122. I'd like to have my paralegal bring that up. you to look at Exhibit 122. Do you recognize those text messages?
Yes, I do.
Are those messages that you sent to Lori Vallow on June 25th of 2019?
Yes, they are.
Do those relate to the allegations that were being told to you by Melanie that Lori had provided her?
Yes, they do.
And that was you trying to fix these things that were lies?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 122.
Any objection?
No objection.
122 is admitted.
And if I may publish. Okay. Brandon, just so we understand, when you were shot at on October 2nd of 2019, did you actually provide the police with your cell phone
I did, yes.
so they could download everything?
Yes.
And is this from your cell phone?
Yes.
So we see on June 25th of 2019 at 6:45 p.m., the first message that you sent? And was this phone number, the 808 number, Lori Vallow's phone number?
Correct.
In the message, what did you tell Lori?
I told her that Melanie believed I helped to try to get her temporary recommend taken away, and that we both knew that it wasn't true. Do you want me to just read it?
Sure.
Lori, I sent this to Charles. I'm sending it to you as well. Charles, Melanie believes I helped you to try to get Lori's temple recommend taken away. You and I both know that's not true. She does not believe me. I wanted to send this to both you and Lori. If either of you care at all for me or my children, you'll come forward and be truthful. I've never done anything to hurt either of you. I can't believe you would lie to her about something like this. I gave you a blessing when you're at your worst in my home. My children will be punished if my wife leaves me or can't believe me when I have done nothing. This is on your heads to make it right.
So your initial thing was about that temple recommend because that was so important, right?
Yes.
But that was just one of the lies that had been told to you by Melanie.
Yes, and at this time I didn't know that she also believed that I was gay. That came after I had sent these texts.
Did you get a response after this first text?
No.
Do we see then a second text at 9:10 p.m., same day, September 25th?
Yes.
What did you say then?
At least have the respect to talk to me to my face, not whispered behind my back. She believes you and you are lying. This is going to affect my children.
Okay. Did she respond to you then?
No.
And a couple minutes later, did you send Lori another message?
I did.
What did you say then?
I will not stop until the truth is known. It says I didn't dip, but a typo. I didn't do the things you said, and because I know I did not, I will find a way to prove it.
Did Lori ever respond to any of those?
No.
Were you able to convince Melanie that these things that Lori had told her were not true?
No.
Would she listen to you about it?
After that evening, she would never spend time alone with me again. There's always someone else with us everywhere that we ever talked or communicated.
Did you want to get divorced?
No,
Did you agree to a divorce?
I did.
How did you and Melanie decide to go forward with the divorce?
We used a mediator.
How does that work?
You have choices. You can either each get your own lawyer and they can help advocate for you through the process, or you can use a mediator. Those are the two, or you can do it yourselves without lawyers, I guess, as well. And as you go through that divorce process, you really discuss two key concepts: all of the money and the finance side, and then the children when you have children. And so a mediator is helpful in being able to help you understand what the law thinks if you both can't agree on something, and help you go through and think. It's a lot to think about. And, you're very, I was very emotional going through that. And so they're helpful that they can kind of guide you to make sure you're covering all your bases and you're thinking about the future for your kids, thinking about what's fair in the financials, all of those things.
At that time, what were the ages of your kids? I know, I got to go back a few years. So in 2019.
Braxton would have been 9. And then I would have had a 5-year-old and what would Blake be? 2000? A 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
And you told us that you started to see a mediator sort of in July of 2019?
Yes.
Do you recall if it was the beginning, middle, or end of July?
Beginning of July.
So really fairly quickly after you were confronted with these theories of you hacking Lori's computer and trying to take her Temple recommend away.
Yeah.
As you went through a mediator, did you agree to have joint custody of your kids?
I did.
Did you and Melanie have a house at the time you were married?
We did, yes. And in the mediation, we agreed to sell it.
Now, prior to the sale of the house, did Melanie move somewhere else to live?
Yeah, we agreed that I would help her find a rental, which we did. And then our house was an expensive house. We were listing it at about $1 million. And so having those young kids inside of it while you're trying to have it show ready all the time was a concern. So we agreed we'd get a rental house where the kids would be able to stay so that they could just be kids and not have to try to live super, super clean. And I would stay in the house and just kind of live in it as a shell house till it's sold.
Okay. Do you recall approximately when Melanie moved out?
July, around the 14th or so, I think. I'm not 100%. It's been 6
Mid-July?
years. Yeah, mid-July.
So the kids were living with Melanie in the rental house, and you were staying in sort of I'll call it a community property house at this point. Do you recall when your house sold?
In September, I think we got it under contract, and at which point I started looking for a rental house, probably.
For yourself?
Yeah, for me to move into so that we could then do our joint 50-50 custody with our kids.
Did you find a house to rent?
I did.
And was that the 3875 East Phelps Street in Gilbert?
Yes.
When you were looking for a residence, did you consider at all the location of Melanie's rental house?
Yeah, I tried to, we had agreed we would stay within a couple miles of each other so that it would be convenient for each of us. And I also tried to move close to where I had before I had built the home that we had. I had lived in that same neighborhood, so I tried to move closely to a place my kids would be familiar.
Okay. Did you sign a lease for that 3875 East Phelps Street on September 13th of 2019?
Yes.
What was your plan in terms of when you were going to move into that new house versus staying in the community home?
I was going to stay in the community home until right before we finished everything up, so like the end of September, and then I would move over to the new house.
And when was the community house supposed to close?
October 1st.
Okay. And what was the mediation agreement for that money on October 1st Who would get what?
It was going to be split between me and Melanie, and it was supposed to all go to one account, and then I would transfer the money over to her.
Okay. So at some point, did the plan ever change as to when you were going to move into the Phelps house?
Yes. I heard from Melanie that I had an option to get my kids early, which I was getting very limited time with my children. That was hard for me. You know, it's difficult going through transitions like that. So she had offered, she said she was going out of town and that I could have my kids early if I got the house early. And so I was excited, and I quickly changed my plans and made a quick move from the current house into the new house to get it ready, because when you have young kids, you have to kind of prepare. You can't just move them in. Everything needs to be kind of organized.
During the mediation, had you and Melanie come up with an agreement as to when each of you would have the children?
Yes.
What was that agreement?
Mondays and Tuesdays would be my days. Wednesdays and Thursdays would be her days. And then we would rotate weekends.
So weekends for you guys was Friday through Sunday?
Correct.
And then how would you hand off the children, and what would happen with your youngest?
I worked, so she would watch my youngest even on my days. And then handoffs would happen at school. If they were in school, we would just drop off and the other person would do the pickup. If they weren't in school, then it would be drop off at each other's houses.
Okay. So you said you worked. Did Melanie work?
She did not.
Okay. So Melanie kind of just tells you she's going out of town on the 26th and offers the children to you. Do you recall about when you moved into now this residence on Phelps?
It's been a really long time. Shortly after, I think, that conversation, about a few days prior to when I got the kids. I think it took me a couple days to move in.
So you had the kids on the 26th.
I did, yeah.
How did you told us you had been planning to move in a little bit later. How did you get moved earlier, quicker? Did you have people help you? What'd you do?
My neighbors that lived across the street from me at the house that I was selling noticed that I was moving and offered to help. I just went and got a truck and decided to move. I was excited. I didn't tell anybody even. I just kind of jumped after it, and then one other friend found out, and he brought another friend. So there's 4 people who helped me move, and they were the only people. I mean, I immediately had my kids after. They're the only people who even knew that I had moved. It was a very quick decision.
Now, you told us that part of the agreement would be that you and Melanie would drop off the kids. At any time, did Melanie ask you for the address of your new residence?
Yes, she did.
Did you provide it to her?
Yes, I did.
You think anything of it when she asked you that?
I mean, no, I did. I had said I would give her my address. Always, we had to drop each other the kids, so she had to know where I lived.
Okay. You told us that you hadn't told anyone else your address?
Yeah, it wasn't like out of secrecy. It just hadn't come up yet because it was so quick.
So, Melanie knew your address?
Yes.
And then you said 2 of your neighbors helped you move?
Correct.
So they knew your address. And then you said one of your friends helped you move?
And he brought another friend, so 2 of my friends knew where I lived.
Okay, so 5 people knew your address?
Yes.
Shown Defense Counsel 123, if I can have my paralegal approach.
There's more live courtroom coverage coming up. Press subscribe now so you don't miss a second from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.